Good day everyone, we are the Fervent 5 and today we are going to discuss statement of cash flows. The learning objectives for this topic are to differentiate the following: operating activities, investing activities, and financing activities. Second, state the classification of the following in a statement of cash flows: dividends received, dividends paid, interest paid, and interest received. Lastly is to prepare a statement of cash flows. Now let us move on with the statement of cash flow. So, etong statement of cash flow ay related sa standards ng PAS 7, which is also about statement of cash flows. So, as the definition states, it provides the information about the sources and utilization of cash and cash equivalents during the period. So, dito nakastate yung cash flows ng entity. Sa cash, it compromises cash on hand and cash in bank. Yung cash equivalents naman ay short-term and highly liquid investments na readily convertible sa cash at subject sa insignificant risk ng pagbabago ng value. So sa report na statement of cash flows, dito natin makikita yung lahat ng movement ng cash ng entity for the period. Makikita natin dito lahat ng cash receipts or lahat ng cash na pumapasok o nare-receive ng entity. And kasama na rin doon yung mga cash na lumalabas o binabayaran ng entity during the period. Cash receipts and cash payments na naka-indicate sa statement of cash flows ay nakakategorize into operating, investing, and financing activities. Included sa cash flows yung inflows or sources at outflows or uses ng cash and cash equivalents. So we will further discuss it on the next slides. Let us now proceed with the classification of cash flows. So, as I've said earlier, nakakategorize into 3 yung cash flows. Una na is yung operating activities, which are the cash flows derived primarily from the principal revenue producing activities of the entity. So, operating activities, sinasabi lang na related to sa operations. Yung mga cash flows na derived from the normal operations ng entity. Next is the investing activities. Dito naman, it deals with the acquisition and disposal of long-term assets na hindi included sa cash equivalents. Last is the financing activities. So, dito naman, yung entity, para makapag-produce siya ng funds aside sa sales and revenues, is pwede siyang mangutang or yung borrowings, o di kaya naman kumuha ng funds from investors or yung equity capital na tinatawag. So now, what are the examples of each of the classification? So first, operating activities. Included dito yung cash receipts from sales ng goods or pag-render ng services or other forms of income. Kasama rin dito yung cash payments from purchases ng goods or services. Pati na rin yung cash payments for operating expenses such as employee benefits, insurance, payments, or refund ng income taxes. Lastly is yung cash receipts and payments from contracts held for dealing or trading purposes. Next naman sa investing activities, included dito yung cash receipts and cash payments sa pag-acquire and pagdidispose ng property, plant, and equipment at intangible assets at other non-current assets. So, kasama rin dito yung cash receipts and payments sa acquisition and disposal ng equity and debt instruments ng ibang entities. Kasama rin yung cash receipts and payments on derivative assets and liabilities, and loans to other parties and collections thereof. Last are the examples under financing activities, which include cash receipts from issuing shares or other equity instruments and cash payments to redeem them, as well as the cash receipts from issuing payables, borrowings, and their repayments, such as notes, loans, bonds, and mortgage payables. Kasama rin yung cash payments by a lessee for reduction of outstanding liability relating to a lease. So, let us remember the following. So, parang summary na rin to ng mga previous slides. So, yung cash flows, as we have said earlier, categorize siya into 3, such as operating activities, investing activities, and financing activities. So yung operating activities, let us take note that it affect profit or loss. Yung investing naman, naapektuhan niya yung non-current assets and other investments. Yung financing naman, it affects borrowings and equity. And with that, natapos na natin yung unang learning objective. So now, let us proceed with the second one, which is to state the classifications ng statement of cash flow such as dividends received, dividends paid, and interest received. So, here is the table for the options that can be used in the cash flow accounts. So, as we can see in the table, merong two options for cash flows on interest and dividends. So first option muna tayo. As we can see sa option 1, yung interest income, interest expense, at dividend income ay nakaklasify as operating activities dahil pumapasok sila sa determination ng profit or loss. Yung dividend paid naman sa option 1, classified siya as financing activity dahil transaction to with owners and it alters the equity structure. Now, for the second option, we can see that interest income and dividend income are classified as investing activities dahil result sila from investments. Yung interest expense naman, classified siya as financing activity dahil result naman to from borrowing. And lastly, yung dividend paid, classified naman as operating activity para ma-assist yung users sa pag-assess ng ability ng entity na magbayad ng dividends galing sa operating cash flows. Please do note that only interests and dividends received or paid in cash are included in the statement of cash flows. Also, only option 1 is available to financial institutions such as banks. With that, we have just finished discussing the second learning objective for this topic. Let us now proceed with the third and last objective, which is the presentation and preparing of statement of cash flows. Cash flows from operating activities may be presented using either direct method, which shows each major class of gross cash receipts and gross cash payments, or indirect method, in which profit or loss is adjusted for the effects of non-cash items and changes in operating assets and liabilities. An example of an operating activities section of a statement of cash flows presented using the direct method is this. And for the indirect method, and now, let's proceed with the presentation of investing and financing activities. As we can see here, presenting investing and financing activities is done through T accounts. So, for non-cash transactions, let us remember this. Only those transactions that affected cash and cash equivalents are reported in the statement of cash flows. Non-cash transactions are excluded and disclosed only. So dito, dapat lang i-take into account na yung included lang sa statement of cash flows ay yung mga transactions na naapektuhan yung cash and cash equivalents, such as pagbili ng assets by paying cash. And excluded naman from statement of cash flows yung opposite, which is yung mga transactions na hindi naapektuhan yung cash and cash equivalents. Or in simple terms, those that are non-cash transactions, such as pagbili ng asset through issuing a note payable. Now let us proceed with the illustrations and preparation of statement of cash flows. For the first illustration, it is about the analysis of cash account method. Makikita natin sa figure yung movements ng cash amounts ng ABC Company during 20X2. So dito sa left side is yung debit. Makikita natin yung mga cash na pumapasok o nare-receive ng company. Sa right side naman is yung mga credit or expenses na nilalabas o binabayaran ng company. Ending balance is computed through subtracting the total credit from the total debit. So next, what are the requirements? So the requirements are to compute for the cash flows from operating activities using option 1, investing activities and financing activities. So dito sa solution, kinlassify lang bawat account into operating, investing, and financing activities. Just like the examples that I have mentioned earlier nung dinifferentiate natin yung classifications ng statement of cash flows. Now, ganito naman mag-prepare ng statement of cash flows gamit yung direct method sa pagpe-present ng cash flows from operating activities. Next illustration is the T-account method. So, ABC Company had the following information during 20X2 na gagawa natin ng T-account. So, we will make a T-account for cash receipts from customers, cash payments to suppliers, cash receipts for operation expenses, and last is yung cash payment for the acquisition of PPE. So, para sa requirement A, meron tayong 600 na accounts receivable noong January 1, 20X2 at sales on account na 8,000. At yung ending accounts receivable natin sa given problem is 400. So, i-add yung sales at beginning accounts receivable at ililess yung ending accounts receivable. Kaya may squeezed collections of accounts receivable tayo na 8,200. Para naman sa requirement B, para malaman natin yung payment for purchases on account, kailangan muna nating isolve yung net purchases, which is may given tayong cost of sales na 4,000 at yung ending inventory natin is 900, kaya may net purchase tayo na 4,900. For the next T account, to compute na cash payments to suppliers, we have 350 accounts payable January 1, 20X2 at net purchase na 4,900, which is nakuha sa inventory T account. So, meron tayong 5,250 at ibabawas natin yung accounts payable na December 20X2, which is 200. Kaya ang ating payments for purchases on account ay 5,050. So, next requirement is to compute for cash payments for operating expenses. Beginning prepaid expense is 390. Operating expense on accrual basis is 1,220. And the ending prepaid expense is 410. Para makuha yung cash for operating expense, i-add natin yung beginning at ending prepaid expense, which is 800. At ibabawas siya sa operating expense on accrual basis, which is 1,220. Para makuha yung cash payments for acquisition of PPE, kailangan nating mag-journal entry para mahanap yung historical cost. So, debit cash 120 and yung accumulated depreciation na 200. Meron daw tayong gains on sale na 15 pesos. Add the given debit less gains on sale, so meron tayong 305 na equipment. For its T account, yung historical cost na nakuha natin sa journal entry, which is 305, ay i-add natin sa December 31, 20X2 PPE na 2,700. So, pag in-add, makukuha natin is 3,005. At tsaka natin ibabawas yung beginning PPE na 1,800. Kaya meron tayong acquisition of property, plant, and equipment na 1,205. So, for the next illustration, it is still T account method but it is cash receipts with write-off. So, dito, na sinasabi na yung ABC Company merong following information as of December 31, 20X1. So, the requirements for this is to compute for the total cash receipts from customers during the period. And here is the solution for the problem. Next is the third illustration, which is about cash flow from operating activities using the indirect method. So, magsisimula tayo sa net income na 2 million, tapos yung mga adjustments ay adjust depreciation at amortization. So, yung depreciation, i-add back natin kasi siya ay non-cash na 160,000. Sa gains and losses ay wala namang nabanggit. Tapos, ang pangatlo ay change in current assets aside from cash at current liabilities. So, yung accounts receivable daw ay nag-increased. So, debit accounts receivable, credit cash. So, kaya yan na-credit ng 350,000. Accounts payable nag-increase din. Credit accounts payable kasi siya ay nag-increased. Debit cash, so kaya 280,000 na positive. Kaya ang net cash provided by operating activities is 2,090,000 pesos. Next, for our fourth illustration, the cash flow from investing and financing activities. So, ABC Company had the following information for 20X2 at ang hahanapin natin dito ay net cash flow from investing and financing activities. So, yun nga, sabi ko lang, ang requirements ay compute the net cash flows from investing activities and financing activities. So, the solution is as follows. Makikita natin dito na we had the following cash payment for acquisition of equipment na 200,000. Minultiply natin yung purchase price na 1 million sa 20%. Cash proceeds of loan granted to officer is 400,000. I-add sila to compute the net cash used in investing activities, which is negative 600,000. The acquisition of the 3-month treasury bill is excluded from the activities section of the statement of cash flows because this transaction involves a mere transfer of cash to cash equivalent. Also, only the 20% cash down payment for the acquisition of equipment was included in investing activities. The remaining 80,000 is a non-cash transaction and is therefore excluded from the statement of cash flows. For financing activities naman, may hiniram tayong 320,000 sa bangko at cash payment for dividends na 120,000, which is ileles natin sa cash receipt from borrowings, so meron tayong 200,000 net cash used in financing activities. The cash receipt and cash payments for dividends are presented separately. The cash used as additional working capital is excluded from the computations above because this pertains to operating activities. And we're now down on our fifth and last illustration, which is the reconstruction of statement of cash flows. So, ABC Company's cash balances as of December 31, 20X2 is 1,760 and 100 pesos for the year 20X1. ABC's December 31, 20X2 statement of cash flows reported net cash used in investing activities of 375 pesos and net cash from financing activities of 1,020. We will compute for the net cash flows used in operating activities. So we have the following given na net cash from investing activities, which is 375, net cash used in financing activities na 1,020. Beginning cash is 100 pesos and ending na 1,760. Ending balance less beginning equals net increase in cash na 1,660. Since pabaliktad yung computation natin, ililes natin yung net cash used in financing activities na 1,020 equal to 640 at i-add yung net cash from investing activities na 375 at yung net cash from operating activities natin ay 1,015 pesos. And with that, we have just tackled all of our learning objectives, and that's a wrap for Chapter 6, Statement of Cash Flows. Thank you for listening, and we hope we get this lesson across. Once again, we are the Fervent 5.